Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And now your host, Ben Adelberg.
And thanks again for joining me here at the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 67. Busy week here at the Back of the Range, but thrilled to have you all listening in to this week's episode. And if I don't say it enough, thank you so much for continuing to support this podcast. It's been a great journey, not slowing down anytime soon. Weekly episodes and great stories from personalities around the game of golf. That's what you'll find right here. If you've just learned about the Back of the Range from a friend, or if you found us on Apple Podcast or Spotify, welcome, and you got some work to do. Catch up on all of our previous episodes from guests like Bob Toski, Dottie Pepper, Stuart Hagestad, and Steve Scott. We released 2 episodes last week. Just wanted to touch on those for a quick moment. Chris DeMarco joined us earlier in the week on our usual Wednesday release day. We chatted about the President's Cup and the Ryder Cup and his work on the Golf Channel, and also his new start, his new career, so to speak, on the Champions Tour. And then on Friday, we had our bonus episode. Really excited to release that early with the U.S. Amateur Champion, Victor Hovland. He's a junior All-American at Oklahoma State. He is heading to the Masters, so that was a lot of fun. A lot of people have reached out to me on that episode. So both of those episodes can be found on our website, thebackoftherange.com. And as always, we are on social media. If you want to learn about upcoming episodes, clips from the past, or see some of my thoughts on the game of golf, be an insider. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The show notes of this episode will have all those links. And again, pop over to thebackoftherange.com. As you may know, we have new merch in stock, new trucker hats. I'm rapidly running out of them. So if you'd like one, shoot me an email or a DM on social media, or go to the website. There's a link that says new trucker hats. Check it out. Get one ordered for yourself, and order one for a friend too. That's not a bad idea. So lots of our listeners recently enjoyed the episode that we had a couple weeks ago with Paul Tesori. He's a caddy on the PGA Tour, currently working for Webb Simpson, but he also worked for Vijay Singh back in the day. Well, this week we have another great caddy from the tour who is also a phenomenal mid-amateur player in his own right. Our guest this week is Corby Segal. Corby is currently on the bag for Brandon Hagy, but he has caddied for Briny Baird, Brandt Jobe, Woody Austin, Kevin Stadler, the list goes on and on. He played his college golf at Cal State Northridge, and he did give it a go on the pro circuit for a little bit, but he did get his amateur status back, and for good reason. He's made 15 appearances in USGA Championships and is the 2018 Southern California Golf Association Player of the Year. We spoke about some of the lessons he learned as a caddy, how they've applied to his own game, and vice versa. Corby's just a laid-back dude from California. He's been on tour for 20 years. He's seen it all. He's done it all, and is clearly one of the good guys out there on tour. So let's get started. Corby, welcome to the Back of the Range.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Well, I got to just, let's talk about the elephant in the room right now. Have you met anyone else with the first name of Corby?
I actually have.
Oh, God. And I couldn't get that guy. But anyway, tell me about that guy.
All right. Well, that guy was actually in my elementary school, and he became a good friend of mine. The only difference with Corby is a nickname, but my first name is really Corbett, and then his first name was Corbin. And we went to elementary school all together and through the middle of junior high before he moved. So we were in a couple classes together. And that was pretty fun because there's not too many Corbys around.
I was going to say, you are the first Corby I've ever spoken to. But you mentioned junior high. Obviously, we're talking to you today. You're an accomplished amateur player, played collegiately at Cal State Northridge, and your current profession is you are a caddy on the PGA Tour. So we're going to get into a lot of that. But let's start at the beginning, or pretty close to it. Give me a little bit of information. Give our listeners a little bit of information about how you got into the game of golf.
When I was 9 years old, I was playing out in the front yard a lot with a friend, my best friend at the time, Stephen Cardarelli. And then parents went on vacation, so I stayed at his house for a week, and all we did was play golf.
Nice.
Went on to first time ever onto a little par 3 course. I shot 42 and hooked on it and kept playing all through high school and whatnot, and just wanted to get better and better. And that's all I did was golf and baseball and soccer all through,
And native Californian, by the way.
Correct. Yep. So always a lot of sun out there, always playing anytime we could play. I got stuck on a golf course. If I wasn't playing other sports, I was at the golf course. No game for practice in soccer or baseball. I was riding my bike up to play golf and hit balls and stuff.
Now, you mentioned all these other sports, baseball, soccer. Now, how long did you keep playing those sports before you focused exclusively on golf, or did you?
I played soccer and baseball through junior high. When I got to high school, I quit baseball and focused on just golf and soccer. And soccer was actually, I played more golf, and then I just played the soccer when I could.
Sure.
And it worked out to be, the coaches in high school actually allowed me to get away with more, because by then I was already playing some tournaments, and I was really good in the high school level, and I was focused on that. But for them to try and get me to play the soccer because I could play, they allowed more things of not as many practices, as everybody else. So
I'm not too familiar with the culture of Cal State Northridge or what that college team looked like. I think you had a future PGA Tour player though on your team. So tell me about Cal State.
Yeah. So I walked onto the team my first year, and then we as a freshman, I played my first tournament. I qualified and played the first tournament and finished third in Nevada Reno's tournament. And on the drive home, the coach looked at me and gave me a scholarship he said, as long as you want to play here, you got a scholarship.
Sweet.
Which was great. Then the next semester, we had Bob Burns come into the school, and he ended up we were Division II that year, and he actually won individual nationals, and we finished third as a team. And so then he played another semester the next year when we turned D1, and we started playing against the Pac-10s and the Big West. And we would always be like the one school or two schools out of getting into the regionals of that division, because we were competing as an independent now in the D1. And so we would always miss out by just a couple teams to get into regionals to qualify for nationals. But we had a solid team.
Yeah.
We had guys that had the aspirations of trying to play. And same thing as I did. I turned pro for 2 years. My dad gave me basically $3,000 to try the mini tour out here in California, and I played on that tour. I had 2 wins and a bunch of top 10s, and I played for 2 years with $3,000.
That's pretty damn impressive, because that's not a lot of money to get started with. And
no, yeah, I just picked and choose the courses that fit my game and stuff, and I knew I wanted to try, but in the back of my mind, I don't hit the ball very far, but I hit it straight. So
right. It's interesting you bring that up. So you were very cognizant of your skill set and what you were suited for. When you're in college and you're seeing these other players turning pro, and you know what your skill set is, does that pretty much limit your decision-making of, okay, can I do this? I mean, how cognizant were you of other players around you, not only on your own team, but at other universities?
Oh, tons. I mean, I played with a lot of players. This goes back in the day. I played with Brent Geiberger.
Yeah.
In college, I played with Kevin Riley, which was Chris Riley's brother.
Yeah.
A bunch of names and players that have been on tour and played on tour. Jeff Gove, I played against a lot in college. Just names, older names that, because I'm 47 now.
Yeah.
But people that have played on tour or whatnot, and I'm just like, okay, I could compete against them in college, but you could see the upside. They compress the ball differently. They hit the ball higher and softer into different pins. My ball is a lower ball flight, so I always knew that, okay, if I tried this, I was always going to have trouble to
to compete on that level. And hence, when Bobby was on our team, once he got through school, he got onto the nationwide tour, or actually back then it was the Nike tour. And while I was in school at Northridge, I went and caddied for him a couple times, and then he got on tour while I was still at school, and I caddied LA, Phoenix, Tucson, and Flint, Michigan back then for him. I caddied 4 tournaments for 2 years for him. It was such a good experience for me because I'm still playing college golf,
right?
And I'm caddying on a few tour events for him and helping him out. But the difference, I saw all these players back then. I saw the Mickelsons, the Furics, and stuff like that, and it was just like, wow, it's very eye opening.
Right?
So,
you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to try and compete against.
Right, and you're seeing the ball flight of, these guys are hitting a 4-iron at the time. 4-iron back there was flying 200, 205, but they're putting these pins over the bunkers, 4 yards over bunkers, and they're stopping them. And I'm just like, my ball is back there, at the back of the green.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just it was a different level. So I gave it the old try, for 2 years of stuff. And then at that time, after that, Bobby had to go back to tour school again. He had lost his card, and I caddied for him at the tour school. He got conditional Nike tour status again, but he ended up getting conditional status. And then the 4th tournament that I worked for him, he won, and then he won the tour championship. And that's how I got on tour. The next year we're caddying on tour, and I've been out there 19 years and more after that.
So let me back this up a little bit. Bob Burns, he's a college teammate of yours. He goes out and you start looping for him, and then you go to Q school, and then everything kind of blows up when he goes and wins the tour championship. What do you remember what your plans were in college? I mean, were you going to get I hate to say it, but you're going to get a real job or work the business world? What was your plan?
I graduated in kinesiology, so I got my degree,
right?
Which was a teaching coaching degree. I always wanted to do something around sports, but I always wanted to be golf related at the time.
Okay.
So I was after college, and I wanted to play that little bit of golf, and I did. And then I was like 26 at the time, I believe. It's 27. And I said, okay, well, I'm caddy. I'm playing golf tournaments. I'm working in a cart barn at one country club, and I'm caddying at another, club caddying. And then Bobby had to go back to the tour school. I said, and he asked me to do that. I said, all right, well, it's time for me to grow up sometime. So if you get through, can I just start caddying for you on whatever tour we get on? And he said, absolutely. And that's how it all started, caddying on tour.
There you go. And you've caddied for, let's see, I have a probably an incomplete list here, but Briny Baird, Brandt Jobe, we mentioned Bobby Burns, Woody Austin, Kevin Stadler, Brent Geiberger, Carl Paulson. Who am I missing? Anyone?
There was a Jay Williamson.
Yeah.
David Bergano.
Yeah. So you've been around.
Cameron Beckman. Yeah. Cameron Beckman a little bit.
Yeah. So you've been on several bags. So I want to talk a little bit about your playing career before we fully get into just me peppering you with caddy questions from the PGA Tour. But you've played in 15 USGA championships, whether they be USAMs or US Mid-Ams. You are the reigning Southern California Golf Association Player of the Year. A couple other names that have won that award is Ricky Fowler and Patrick Cantlay, but Corby just seems like it's a name that belongs on a big trophy like that. So I think that's awesome. What are some of the things that you have been able to take from your day job of caddying that you've been able to apply to this success that you've seen when you're actually playing golf?
I would say probably the biggest 2 things would be the course management, which I learned from Bobby Burns back at the start. And then Briny reiterated the whole course management deal for me.
Okay.
And when I worked for Briny, I worked 8 years for Briny. And people ask me to this day what his game was about, and it was straight plodding the golf course, hit it from A to B, B to C, and just manage the game, go for the pins only when it was, available to him, and play smart golf. So smart golf for Briny was, what he taught me was, okay, I'm hitting a 4-iron into this hole, water's on the right. Well, I'm going to aim 30 feet over here, and I'm going to make my par. And then, hey, I'm on good greens on tour. I'm going to roll in some 30-footers. But I don't have to try and hit it at that pin, which narrows the gap. And if I block it, 20 feet, no, I'm in the water making a bogey or double.
Right.
So we took those things out of play. And Briny was the best at that. He was best at looking away from pins and playing to his strengths. And, he would go for pins and go for shots. Absolutely. But when it was necessary and when it was comfortable to him, that was probably the biggest one. The other one is I would say a lot of attitude and mental stability as far as not having so many ups and downs.
I'm listening to what you're saying about Briny Baird. Was that a conscious choice of his as far as this is the best way I think there is to play golf, or is that a protection against maybe a lack in a skill set? Like I can't bomb it, or I need to protect against errors so I can put myself in the best situation to take advantage of my short game?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say he would protect from errors. I think his strong points were Briny's was he hit a lot of fairways.
Okay.
And he was a really good iron player.
Okay.
So he could manage his ball better than a lot of players on tour. But when you're standing out there with 4-iron and water to the right or to the left or whatever, he would play percentages golf and play to the right, correct side of the pin and take away limit mistakes.
So he was basically, instead of blow up rounds that end in 74, he's just carding more 70s and just making sure he's closer to that number. Now you've been on several different bags. What's the process of when are you getting approached by other players? It seems that caddying is a very inconsistent, and I mean, you've been doing it for nearly 20 years. Is it your personality that you're kind of like, well, everything's going to kind of work out some way, or have you always been fortunate to just have bags set up for you? Like how's that dynamic for you when you're out there on tour?
Yeah, everybody's there's a lot of different scenarios with that with caddies. I will say there's the loyal and loyal side and the commitment side as far as some caddies, especially myself. Then there's other ones that are working and looking for another job the whole time they're working for somebody.
Okay.
Which is, I've been approached by a few players and, for, trial weeks here and there when my players have been hurt and stuff. And it's like, I have to believe in the player myself.
Right.
For one. Otherwise I can't help you if I don't think, of seeing the games, everybody that gets on tour obviously is good. Is seeing their game and seeing how they act. Is that something that's going to bond with me? So that's one way of limiting or having more jobs as well. Because I got to be confident in you. You got to be confident in me. We're not going to do any favors if we're kind of not bonding together.
Right.
So
well,
that's one part of it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because it kind of leads me into this other question. I think Justin Rose recently won an event and he was using Gareth Lord, and
right.
and his full-time caddy Mark Fulcher is currently recuperating from, I believe, his heart procedure. And
correct.
I think in the post interview, Fuchs made some comment Lordy made some comment. He's like, there's certain things that Justin likes that is different than his full-time player, which is Stenson. So can you maybe shed some light on maybe a tactic or a personality trait that you have to kind of form with one player and how that may change when you go to another player. I'm just kind of, I'm interested in the fact that, okay, like you may do one thing with one player, but then you clearly realize quickly that, okay, this player doesn't like that.
Every player is different. And one of the jobs as a caddy is seeing and realizing the little nuances that they do like and don't like, and what they do, and some of the things that they do. Like when I worked for Brandt Jobe, when I walked the golf course, he was the first person that I had that hit it far. So I had to find out all the tendencies of the rough over bunkers, which side of the fairways the rough was more rough or not, because we were hitting driver he was one of the first ones who just started hitting driver all over. If we're hitting driver, we're getting up there, we're going to hit wedges and close to the green.
Got it.
So you had to go up there and find, okay, left side's better on this hole, right side's better on that hole. And then, so that's little things that he liked. Then Brandt was the little routines. Like Brandt would come out and I'd be on the range and he tapes his fingers and he marks his balls and he does everything did a certain way. Then when I went from Brandt to Briny, I made so much money working for Briny off some of the other caddies, because Briny walked out of the clubhouse at an hour and 2 minutes before tee time, between an hour and 5 and an hour and 1, based on how far we had to walk to the range. So I knew down to the minute of when he was coming out to the range, and I knew on the range, each club that he's hitting, he would look back after a few shots and goes, "Where are we?" And I would know you're a minute fast right now, 2 minutes fast, based on what club he was hitting. And then we left the range at 28 minutes before tee time. Went to the chipping green to the putting green. Then as soon as he's done with the putting green, I would give him a 7-iron and a driver, and he would go back and hit about 7 to 8 more balls.
Right.
And then go to the tee box. We also Briny knew if we teed off first, second, or third, because he wasn't going to the tee box. If we're third up, he's not getting there 7 minutes before tee time. He's going to walk up about 2 minutes before, a minute and a half even.
Really?
And everybody, yep. Because he wants to be loose and be ready to hit that shot after he doesn't want to be standing around and waiting.
So this is a guy that, yeah. So you mentioned you made so much money off other caddies. Are you talking about you just laid a couple bets saying, I bet you my guy walks out right about now?
Yep. Basically, again, if anybody want to bet he walks out within a minute?
This is great. So, all right, because you're painting this picture that you're some sweetheart out there, this nice little tour veteran. You're a degenerate gambler, right, Corby? I mean, how bad is it?
I like to play money games. That's for sure.
There you go. Oh gosh, that's fantastic. So, I guess that's a great lesson for our listeners, where you need to understand your personality, and as a player, when you're going out to play your game, so put yourself in the best situation to succeed. Clearly, Briny doesn't like to stand around. Correct,
and he was very direct, and like on the range and at practice time and stuff, he was. A lot of tour pros, you see a lot of them standing around on the range and talking to each other or whatnot.
Sure.
Briny would do that here and there, but not only when he was basically done with his practice. When he's on the course or he's at the range, it was there. You get our work done, do our check marks, and then, okay, if somebody, wants to talk, then it'll give him, the time to talk or do whatever and shoot the BS and then move on. Briny he treated the golf as his job.
Of course. Speaking of the job, what are some of the things that you've had to recently do in maybe the last 5 or 7 years as a professional caddy that you weren't doing when you first started?
A lot more video.
Okay.
I work for Brandon Hagy now.
Yep.
And he's one of the long ball hitters on tour. He's got Jason Goldsmith, Doc Lardon, Brady Riggs. He's got more teachers and stuff that are all involved as part of the team, that back in the day only the select few had those.
Right.
Now a lot of the players are coming up with teams of that help with everything. And then Brady and Brandon go back. Brandon's only 27, but he's been working with the same teacher for 15 years, who here in Southern California, I actually played against in high school. So it goes, it's a full circle.
Sure. So you've seen it all. So you mentioned Brandon Hagy. So he is your player right now. And, it's interesting. He was out for all of last year with a wrist injury, and you didn't take another bag. You just kind of took some time off to go play golf on your own and devote to your own game. Is that a common thing, or is it? Do you think another caddy would be looking for another bag? I mean, how common is that?
Yeah, most are usually looking right away for another bag. I did. I worked a couple, like last year. I worked a couple weeks for Woody Austin on the senior tour, and then I just kind of waited for Brandon. I believe in Brandon's game and the loyalty. So I was like, okay, I'll sit around. I got offered, like I said, the 1 week things. I got offered a few 1 week jobs and stuff that I was already told that, can you just fill in for a week? I'm starting with so-and-so. I'm like, well, I don't really want to just do 1 week. If you want me to do a month,
right.
I can help you, because 1 week, you're not really, it's kind of hit or miss. You're not really getting a chance to prove anything.
And I know this is a job. It's your profession. It's how you support your family. But just by listening to you, I know you got to get paid, but you want to accomplish some things out there. I mean, you want to win.
For sure. And that's the one thing that's in the back of my mind that I haven't done. I've won twice on the, back then on the Nike tour. And I think I've lost in 2 playoffs on the regular tour. One with Briny, a 6-hole playoff in San Jose. We lost to Bryce Mulder. And then I lost in a 6-person, I think it was 5 or 6-person playoff in Atlanta at Sugarloaf with Brandt Jobe. And that's when Mickelson won that.
Yeah.
In that playoff. And so I have some other second place finishes, but that's the one thing that's leading me away that, a lot of my friends have won. I'm looking for that W. That's what keeps me going out there.
Let me ask you a couple other questions about the life of a caddy. The necessary evil of pro-ams. I know that maybe people think that it's tough for the pro, where they kind of have to entertain some 20 handicappers that are high rollers, but on the golf course there can be kind of a headache to deal with. I bet the caddy of the PGA Tour Pro gets just as much of that as well. It all comes down to the group. Okay.
You can know right away in the first 2 holes if it's going to be an enjoyable day with the group, or if it's going to be one of those that you can't wait to be done with. Like I said, if the amateurs come in and are, every amateur wants to come in and talk with the pro and do
right.
stuff. A lot of them are also using that as a practice round, so they're trying to see the golf course as well. So you got to have just that happy medium to where the good groups are the groups that sit there and talk, have the fun, walking down the fairway, camaraderie around the greens, get the putts in. But then when the hole's over for the amateur, and the pro wants to take 2 minutes to, talk with his caddy about something over here on the green and, figure out the greens a little bit more, let them do that. That'll go a long way. Instead of being in the kitchen the whole day.
Yeah.
Give them those 2-3 minutes and then walk down the fairway again, ask more questions, have some more fun, and then let the pro, concentrate again for another 2-3 minutes.
Can you share a nightmare story from one of your many pro-ams that you've been involved in? We don't need names. We don't need the pro's name, but I'm sure there had to be one, at the top of the list that's like, oh dear God, just go take up checkers.
Right. Well, everybody's got the stories of seeing, you're warming up on the range and you're seeing so-and-so players and you're going, oh, okay, whoever gets him is going to have a fun day.
Oh no.
Well, I mean, that almost as soon as you start seeing that and it's visible, it happens to you more often than not. But so we've had a couple times for sure where, you know, you get the guy in the loud pants or the loud shirt and he just got the cigar out and he's just nonstop talking, and it's just like, okay, how long is this going to be? And they show up on the first tee and there they are with you and you're like, oh boy.
So it's almost, it's really doesn't sound like it's as much about the playing, the skill of the player.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Obviously some pros are better than others in the Pro-Am style. I'll give you an example with Briny. Briny was always very polite, very professional with all the amateur groups. But even then, we're there, and it's okay after, you know, 13, 14 holes. It starts to wear on you a little bit because you're out there longer than you really want to be, and it gets tiresome. So at some point, almost 99% of professionals at one point will end up hitting that spot saying, okay, I'm done right now. That's when I get the hint of, okay, now I start talking to them a little bit more.
Right.
So he can and tell a few stories to them, you know, when they ask me questions and stuff. And then Briny or any other player that I work for could go off to the side and you know, putt by themselves a little bit more or hit a chip here or just get away for those few minutes, you know.
Those guys are basically looking for you or your pro to share a story that they can go back and tell their buddies that they heard from the pro and the PGA Tour.
They always have something like, so is it true that this and this and this happened?
Right.
That's always the question.
Or they want to be able to name drop, like, well, you know, this my third cousin on my father's side. Well, not my third cousin, but my third cousin's dentist one time played with. Yeah, they want to drop that on them.
Exactly.
All right, so give me the one. Can you give me a story that you've shared with one of these Pro-Am guys that's like your go-to? Like when they ask, like, so what's it like, or do you ever do this with Phil, or tell me about Tiger? Do you have one of those stories that's like the go-to? All right, this will give them exactly what they need.
I've only been out a couple times with Tiger. He was a Southern California kid too, and we actually have. So one of my stories that I tell them is like, all right, Tiger's a couple years younger than myself, but we both played in Southern California stuff.
Right.
And supposedly the Nike factory in Oregon, in our junior golf days, they supposedly, and I've been told this by the Nike reps, that at one time, I don't know if it's still there, but at one time they had score sheets for age divisions back from junior golf. And they had his name and my name on two sheets that were separate. We had both won our age group. So
nice.
That I tell them about that because they all want to know Tiger. And I say, see, I was a little older than him, but I won my age group too.
Yeah, you're right with them. I'm the same guy.
I said, he just has a lot more money now. So that gets a little chuckle. Then they want to know, okay, so where'd you play with them? And we played at Torrey Pines, and I said we played with him for 36 holes, and I never saw him. And everybody's like, how do you explain that? I said, well, we played 36 at Torrey, and we would walk off the tee about 150 yards, 200 yards, and we'd keep going down the fairway, and then he'd dart off either left or right because he never hit a fairway.
Right.
And then all you would do is see the crowd of people form a U-shaped thing, and we're in the middle of the fairway, and we'd hit our shot, and we're looking over. We can't see anything. And then all you see is the club head at the top of the swing, and a ball come through the chute of people every time. And there it is, 10 feet again.
That guy.
So we were beating them for like 32 holes. I think we were like 4 up on him. And then Bobby 3-putted our last 2 holes, and Tiger finished birdie to flip us. And that was the first 2 days. And I was like, yeah, Bobby, can you not 3-putt the last hole, then we would have played with him again, and maybe we could have seen.
Yeah, maybe you could see him hit a fairway.
Right.
So, gosh.
So everybody asked, like, how great was it to play with Tiger? And my comment,
I never
like,
saw him.
my biggest comment is I never saw him.
Yeah, what's that doing for you? Just hitting in the middle of the fairway all the time. I mean, come on. So let me ask you another couple other caddy questions. You know, recently, I'm not sure if you've seen this. It's kind of a big deal. Sergio completely went nuts on the greens in Saudi Arabia and took care of the bunkers. And I know you've probably been around the time when Rory Sabatini left Ben Crane behind because he was playing slow. And
Oh, yeah.
I think Davis Love III smacked and broke a sprinkler at Bay Hill one year. As a caddy, are you ever able to kind of take your player to task and say, hey, you need to cool it, or do you just kind of have to go along for the ride because it's your boss?
I think there's some of both. I think I was more timid, my first X amount of years of, well, if he's going to do what he's going to do, it's fine if he gets fined, or
right.
It is what it is. As I've gotten older, and especially with like Brandon, because he's the youngest that I've worked for in a long time, he got him as a rookie. I met him when he was in college. I kind of talked to him as much as I can about doing the right thing, and he's a very professional kid.
Right.
But when you see him, he's got his head on his shoulders the right way. But when you see him pout and stuff, you got to make sure that he's listening and doing the right thing and not getting too down and not going to do something that he's going to regret after he does it. So we have the little chat down the fairway and say, hey, pick your head up, just to make sure he reiterates of not looking like a fool out on with all these people watching and doing, being professional.
Sure. Are you impressed with a lot of these young kids that are coming up, and the first name that comes to mind is Cameron Champ, but there's just dozens and dozens of young studs. Matthew Wolf from Oklahoma State just had a great tournament out at Phoenix. Are you looking at these these young guys coming up and saying, man, they just hit it a ton, they're going to be superstars? Or you kind of say, there's that learning curve. They're very, very green. What are things like, if you were brought in to talk to any one of these guys, if you put 10 of them in a room and you had an hour to talk to them, what are some of the things you would mention to these young pros that they need to learn or they need to kind of keep in mind when they're starting out on the PGA Tour?
Well, a lot of it is the demeanor of the person.
Yeah.
If you it's fine to call it cocky and
Right.
walk around like I'm going to do it, but you have that outlook and you you get right on the PGA Tour. Unless you have success in your first 2 months, you're going to be awakened, because everybody on tour can do it. An example, I'll give you a name with Andrew Landry.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like any world beater. The next thing you know, he had a good, couple months, and he gets a win, and he just works hard, does the right thing. But is that somebody you would think is just going to be a world beater or do it? No, but he's proven and he's had a good start to his career on tour, because he's very calm and does the right things and acts the right way. Then you get the other extreme, and if you don't have that success, you're going to be put down right away, and then you're going to struggle to get it back. So being even keel, to an extent, goes a long way, I believe. Like, look at Austin Cook.
Yeah, Austin Cook was a guest in season 1, and yeah, you're absolutely right. Both of those guys came out of the Adams Pro Tour. Both of them, not, like you said, not real world beaters coming up, and they're both winners. So,
and I think they're both from seeing the even keel and being confident and not being cocky. They can survive and do the stuff. You walk around. I've seen Cameron Champ. All I've seen him do is hit balls and putt. Haven't been out with him yet, but nothing seems to faze him. He's just kind of going about doing his business.
What when you're seeing a pairing come up and the tee sheet comes out, other than your player obviously that you're with, Who are some of the players that when you get that pairing, you're like, okay, this is going to be a fun day. I don't know if we're going to shoot 66 or 72, but this is going to be a fun day. This is going to be a fun day at the job.
Well, obviously, it's all the big names because you're like excited to get with them.
I wouldn't think obviously, but see, I wouldn't think that's obvious. See, I would think at some point having crazy galleries and people moving, like if Tiger puts out first, then they don't really care about whoever you're caddying. Yeah.
It's almost like being in front of those groups is more of a problem than playing with them or behind them.
Okay.
Being the group in front, because it's usually the Tiger's got, 4 or 5 deep. So the people that start moving, well, most people are, first, the next, people in line are still there watching the rest of the group because now they actually get to see a shot. so it is still kind of outlined and whatnot as far as people. So it's not that hard, but the group in front, everybody's always trying to get up and see their shot coming in and get up so they can get in position to see something. So it's actually harder to be the group in front of like the Mickelson and Tiger and Rory and Justin Thomas and Fowler, those guys, because you always got to get the crowd to stop from moving, from coming up. But playing with them, I've been out with Tiger, like I said, the Tiger the one time, Phil a few times, Ricky.
You have, and back to your playing career, you have, this is a very cool tournament that I just recently learned about, the Straight Down Classic out in California. So Straight Down's a clothing company, and they sponsor this 2-man event. You've won this, I believe, 3 or 4 times. And
3 times. Yep.
3 times. And I mean, you're playing against PGA Tour pros. I know McCord's out there. I know Freddie Couples has played in this thing. Tell me about the Straight Down Classic, and how did you start playing in that event?
My friend is a club GM in Southern California, Scott Hine. They call him the Big Tuna. He's kind of a big boy.
How did he get the nickname Big Tuna? You can't move past that.
Yeah,
Big Tuna.
He's just a big boy, and I think they started out as I don't know if I get the story 100% right or not, but I think they were calling him kind of the big fish of the club pros at the time.
I see. Okay.
And he kind of worked into the Big Tuna, and he kind of circled back to them because he's become an accomplished Southern California club pro, and then hence he moved on to the GM atmosphere of it. So he actually has tour club head speed. We played in this tournament with like Ricky Barnes. The first time we won it, we played with Ricky on Sunday.
Yeah.
And the second round, and we're playing with Ricky, and Ricky was talking to him the whole time. Like, "You're just a club pro." What, it's like,
bullshit, man.
Yeah, he's like, "You're hitting it past me," and what's your club head speed? They were getting all into questions about his game, and during that time, I was just making birdie and birdie and birdie. And that year was actually it was the first time we won it. We beat Freddie Couples in a playoff.
How cool is that, playing against Freddie in a playoff?
Yeah, so that was the first time we won it. We played a 1-hole playoff. They actually both made bogey, and I made par, and got the winner bottle of wine.
Okay, it's not exactly a PGA Tour winner's check, but you'll take it.
Yeah, no, I guess.
You got
the club pros, they got a pretty good little purse, but.
Yeah, I mean, and you're playing all these amateur events, and I'd have to think that the one thing that you're using to your advantage when you're playing these amateur events is your experience being on tour, and just like you mentioned with Briny Baird, course management or being even keel or having a positive attitude. Most of the amateurs that you run into, they don't have that. Have you been able to share any of your experiences with any of your fellow amateurs and kind of help them along the way? I'm just thinking like what are some of the biggest mistakes you see? Like if you're on the range at a US Mid-Am or you're on the range at a US Am, what are some of the things that you see that the common amateur is doing that maybe they should change?
The biggest thing I'd say is they're trying too hard as far as you're hitting the ball stalled and whatnot, then limit your practice. If you have confidence in what you're doing at the time, You don't need to sit there and grind and beat balls. A lot of amateurs and stuff are just out there for too long and putting the stress on their body and mind and being not 100% recuperated and ready for the next day for the tournament round and whatnot. So I'd say practice is, you want to do it, but you want to do it effectively. And that's what Briny did really well. And it's what I've gotten into with Brandon, as far as limiting the practice and making it more efficient.
Let's see. What else could I ask you? Give me some of the caddies on tour that you wouldn't mind be stuck in a rain delay with, having just sitting around the table chatting. Who's some of your boys on tour?
Chicken Man, Damon Green, caddy for Zach Johnson.
So Damon's your guy. Who else are your guys?
I hung out a lot with and roomed a lot with in my middle years with a guy named Jeff Willett, and he caddies for Nick Taylor now.
Okay.
After Brandt Jobe and I split up, I got Skillet. We call him Skillet. I don't know where Skillet comes from, other than his last name's Willett, and we roomed together, hung out a lot. He's the one that can do all the talking at the bar, and I'm a kind of a quiet guy, so we'd hang out at the bar, and go to dinner, and I'd be the one that, okay, what time are you going to eat? He'd go to the bar, have a few drinks. I'd get there. I'd order. I'd eat with him. We'd eat together, and then I'd leave, and he'd stay there for some more beers.
Still at the bar. Okay, perfect. I never knew caddies used to drink. That's amazing. No, I'm just totally kidding. Let's see. I was going to ask you this. So, there's lots of, obviously, the talk of players that with the pressure and dealing with their nerves, they have to perform, they have to play their best when it matters the most, but you don't hear a lot of people talking about caddies getting nervous. Have you been nervous inside the ropes caddying on the PGA Tour? What are maybe some of the, hate to bring up any, rookie mistakes or bad moments, but how have nerves affected your ability to do your job?
I don't know if it's nervousness. I know I've felt more nervous when I play myself. I'd say on course, on tour and stuff, I don't know if it's a nervous, but you get those goosebumps and you get that, that feeling, where you get tingly and stuff. And it's like, that's usually because something good is happening.
Okay.
So when something good is happening, you get those tingly feelings and stuff. I just try and use my breathing techniques that I use when I play, and I take the deep breaths and the inhale and exhale as I'm walking down the fairway or on the green, and I make a conscious effort to breathe before I give a response to a yardage or a read of the putt or a decision making on the club. So I'm not uptight when I'm helping make decisions. So I use my breathing techniques that I use for my playing while caddying.
That's interesting. Okay. So you have kind of like the crossover of taking things you've learned as a caddy into your playing in your amateur playing career, and then also taking your things you've learned as a player into your caddy life.
100%. And it's helped. It's helped me. Like I didn't start playing, I was at home, when I was at home, these guys were asking me to play these club events, and I couldn't play because I still had my pro status from, years ago. So I got my amateur status back, and then that's when I started playing the couple club events, and then I started playing the Southern California stuff. And then next thing you know, I had only played in one amateur, U.S. amateur, when I was in college. And then the next thing you know, when I'm 39, I'm 47 now. So 8 years ago, I started trying the stuff again. And I started qualifying for these amateurs and U.S. mid-ams and won 4-ball. And it's just taken off. Everybody's, I've had a great later career for myself.
And now you're getting pretty close to where you're going to be able to play some of the senior amateur stuff. I mean, you got about 6 or 7, well, I guess about 7 or 8 years before you get to be 55 and get to play in that. I would have to imagine you're looking forward to that.
Yes, I'm looking forward to
another division of tournaments. You're not looking forward to 55.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to. I'm hopefully in my mind. Everybody asks me because everybody's seen what I've done recently, the question is, are you going to try the senior tour? And I joke and say, I couldn't beat them then. Why am I going to be able to beat them now? As they've been playing all this time, and I'm just caddying and playing my tournaments, and it's a fun events for me. It's not my livelihood, so I'm like, no. But the one thing that I have confidence in, I'm like, I have confidence that, okay, I'm going to play with them in a tournament, and it's going to be the U.S. Senior Open. I have, I feel like, okay, I can qualify for that, and then I can play with them. The only other competition that I played with tour pros is, and I went to Columbus for the second stage of U.S. Open qualifying about, 7 years ago. And I take a friend from California to caddy for me. He's sitting in the car as I'm warming up because he has a job. So he's sitting in the car doing some work stuff, and he comes out onto the range when I'm hitting balls on the range, and I'm hitting balls between Mike Weir and Charles Howell III. And he looks up at me and goes, "What is this?"
He really didn't understand what the qualifier was.
Yeah, he knew what I was doing, but he didn't know the tour site.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So you're up at oh God. So he just didn't have any idea what you were walking into.
Right. And he goes, well, what is this? And I said, well, there's more spots here, and I've played these courses before, so if I go have a good 2 rounds and shoot 700, I can make it.
Yeah. He didn't realize you're going to be standing next to like a former All-American at Oklahoma State and the Masters champion.
Correct.
Whoops.
And so then I'm playing with Kyle Stanley before this was before he took off. And then another pro, Chris Wilson, who's been a long time nationwide web tour player. And so we get on the course, and I'm like even par for the first couple holes or whatever. And then we get on this par 5, and I hit a good drive down the middle, and Kyle gets up and hits this drive over the corner. And my buddy looks at me and goes, "What the hell?" This is when Kyle just killed it. And so we walk up, and we walked it off. It was 109 yards past me.
I'm glad you're laughing, because that gives me the permission to laugh a little bit, because that's
that's the record. It's still the record. I call it the record.
Oh, that's the record.
Yeah,
that's.
I just saw Kyle in San Diego on the putting green, and we just chuckled about it again.
You said you still got the record, big guy.
Yep.
So you didn't get through that qualifier, is what you're trying to say.
You're right. I think I shot 4 over the first round, and then I shot even the second round.
What are some of the events that on your calendar? I mean, obviously, it's the pro is circling the date and when they're going to play in a tournament. But what are some of your favorite PGA Tour spots across the years?
Augusta, I've worked it twice in 06 and 09. 06 for Brandt Jobe and 09 for Briny Baird. So obviously that's the number one goal. So you get into that, you're obviously always going to have a good year. So I love Sawgrass. Okay. I look forward to that. I look forward to that tournament every year. Memorial and Colonial.
A little more of a classic guy than some of the newer layouts, apparently. Well, Corby, I appreciate you joining me here today at the back of the range. Best of luck to you and Brandon Hagy for the rest of the year. And we'll try and do it again sometime soon.
Perfect. Thanks again for having me, Ben.
And there you have it. Another great episode here at the back of the range. Special thanks to Corby Segal for joining us this week. Don't forget, leave a review in Apple Podcasts. I can't stress enough how important that is. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And we'll see you again next week for another episode here at the back of the range.